Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Well, photography for me comes in many ways. As a musician, and an author, I use a lot of artwork for my creative media. So I understand the power of how an image really is 1,000 words. At the same time, I grew up in the 80s with Polaroids. And so we would take a lot of photos and be shaking them, which now I've learned you're not supposed to do. But essentially, it's nice to be able to see pictures. I love that they are snapshots of a moment in time. So like, let's say you're taking a family photo, you could have all this chaos happening and somehow have just a magic moment of like, we took that photo and everyone looks so happy and smiling and looking there. And then people go back to chaos and you have no idea before video that even happened. So I think that's amazing that you're documenting that. People who are having kids now have the beauty with phones of being able to document everything. So for some of us, like a kid from the 80s like me, we have some photos and then there's like a gap, and then you're 12. And so now you can have literally almost anything and continue to have cloud storage to have so much space. So that's exciting that photos will live on. But if you look at anything from, Egyptian hieroglyphics to now, like there's something where pictures just say something without you having to actually use verbal words.
That was great. Clifton, okay, I love how everybody has a different way of answering because obviously everybody's relationship is a little different. First of all, Clifton Beach. Should I call you Cliff or should I call you Clifton or what should I call you?
Well, everyone calls me Cliff. Clifton is my formal name, but like everyone in music and books and everything calls me just Cliff.
Okay, I'll try not to call you Jennifer. Sorry, I'm just an idiot. Basically, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Somehow we're going to get to this question of like, if life really is a gift, how do we make every second count? What I'm trying to do is share with the world how interesting people are doing stuff and, and in some way finding meaning, in some way making every second count. Because the point is to live, right? To really, hopefully live an amazing life. And this is the first time we've met. I haven't looked at the photos. For people to see the photos, they go on YouTube or they go on the website. They're around. Hopefully look you up because the links are in the show notes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Really good to meet you, man. I love your energy.
Nice to meet you. I'm excited. I always love meeting new people, and I think music is like that. You go into different band situations and stuff. You just learn to go with the flow, and everybody's putting good energy out there. So it's always nice to meet you. It's a happy connection.
Wicked. And it's funny because your shirt says antisocial. What are you trying to tell me, Cliff? What are you trying to tell me?
It's just, I'm letting you know, not everybody deserves the right to have a communication, but I'll give you 100 at the beginning.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to your first photo. Okay, so it's an image of what looks like some artwork about, a review of a book, right? So the book is Side Hustle and Flow. And Flow is kind of written in a more cursive, different font. Cliff Beach. The review says the book is wonderful, so much goodness, page by page, and I love all the references to quotes and movies. The book reminds me that I can do anything I put my mind to. Okay, Side Hustle. Take it away, man. Okay, you have a book.
Yeah, so it seems like it's self-congratulatory showing it that way, but it's really about Jenny. It's really about I made this connection with a person who is outside of my sphere of influence, meaning that this person found my book from another podcast, felt compelled to buy the book, read it, share it, talk about it, and felt like it changed their life. And that's never really happened to me. And so it was exciting because she is literally the perfect person to understand Side Hustle and Flow. She is a person who has lupus, and she's trying to help a lot of women that have those types of illnesses. At the same time, she's the vice president of finance for a huge Fortune 500 company. And that's what I made the book for people who work a full-time job, but somehow can figure out how to have more passionate, more purpose-filled lives. That we have this kind of concept that is all or nothing. If I can't do music 100% of the time, then I do it none of the time. And then we have people that are just like sad because it's like, why not, even if you could do 30 minutes a week, it's better to have 30 minutes than no minutes. And that's what the book was about. But also realizing as an author, even if it's autobiographical, no one cares about your story unless it influences their own
Okay.
personal story. So it can't be so much about me, you know? So it's like, even though I'm the medium of putting that book out there, I want to learn these stories like Jenny. So for her to be able to connect with me and share with me so that I can find out she even existed and to have deep conversations offline with her was very gratifying. So that's what that picture signifies. It's like,
Oh,
if you
wow.
put stuff out there, you can connect with people like yourself that I didn't know before. And now we can be connected.
And here we are. Yeah. Okay. So you're a writer, you're a musician. So where do we go? Side hustle and flow. So why side hustle and flow? Like those words are really a massive, in some way, a challenge or an invitation to get people to kind of break out of their mold, break out of their usual lives, I guess. But then the flow is all about finding your groove, right? So it's like this
Yeah.
it's a dual thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk about your book? Like okay, you've already said it's kind of like a memoir. Okay, what's your book?
Yeah, it's half memoir, half self-help. Side Hustle and Flow, the title is a play on words from the movie Hustle and Flow, if anybody has seen it, with Terrence Howard. One of the songs won the first, I think, rap Oscar in the mid-2000s. But I learned that hustling for hustling's sake is tiring. You know, it's like people have this idiom of work smarter, not harder. Working harder on its own without working smarter does not work. In the same way, hustling just to hustle doesn't work. The flow is how you put it together and having the balance. Because you can't, again, have an all or nothing approach to doing it or not doing it. You know, there was someone who told me basically like, oh, I don't know if I should do this because it'll take too much time. And the consensus was, do it or don't do it. The time will pass either way.
Right.
It behooves you to do it. And so now that I've been studying as I get older, working on the body, working on the mind, I've been doing a lot of Qigong and yoga and stuff like that are all about flow and breathing and really coming back to this idea of play, but also practice. That it's not like you have to be perfect to do it. You're doing it to get a little bit better each time in those baby incremental steps. And so to be able to put a life together where you're able to work and have a family and volunteer and do spiritual things and other stuff you want to do, that whole wheel of life, it's like you're juggling all these balls and there's so many different distractions and things that take you off course. But again, you side hustle and flow. You're breathing through it and you're learning that I can digest my life one bite at a time. If you try to do it more than that, then you get indigestion and that's uncomfortable. So it's like you can do it one bite at a time and that's the flow. So I was hustling for a long time and burnt out. And then when I figured out and flow, then now I was able to do that. Because when you look at a river, if it's running, that's good. If it's stagnant, that is not good. And so flow is super important.
So I have right now about 800,000 questions to ask you. So where do I start? Okay, so the first thing, just so you know, you get to know me a little bit. I wrote a book called The 12 Dimensions of a Service Leader, right? And that was about looking at a person's service or energy and how they connect with other people. Okay. Within that book, within that sort of world, one of the things that we talked about was notion of flow, right? So I don't know if you've read the book by, his name is kind of long and funny, but he studies in the US. His name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. So I think he's Czech or he's from Europe. Don't remember the country. But his whole book called Flow is talking about how to get into a flow state, right? So that's part one. And I don't ask questions. I just talk and then, okay, so that's just that. So flow state. Keep that in your head. The other thing is that I was talking to a friend about how in the past, if I got a little bit high, I'd start rapping, sort of just free verse, just rapping, because I have this history of performance art and poetry and writing and stuff. And every once in a while, I don't know why, but, definitely in rap, you get into a flow state, and it's just kind of coming out and everything. So now you've learned a little bit about me. So why don't you take it from there? So riff off that.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you were saying that about rap. I also have quoted him. I can't pronounce his name either in my book. But yeah, flow is coming from the music world. It's like, it's innate. when you're
Hmm.
playing and you're playing with other people, that it's a flow, that you're playing with people, that it's a conversation, and we can't just all talk all over each other. So like, how are we going to weave in and out of this thing? And music has a rhythm and dissonance and notes and tonality and other stuff. It's like, well, I can't go into a music situation where I'm like, what rhythm I am, how many beats is it? It's like you have to
Yeah.
kind of start to automate that stuff within yourself. And so music and creativity lends itself to a flow. You talk about when you're in like different states from using, getting high and stuff like that. It's true. Whether you do that in a natural high or other ways, you do kind of have different states of the brain and how the waves are going, and that's a flow. And
Sure.
so sometimes you can unlock certain potential, almost in a limitless type of way, if you can change your state. And I know that there are people who are doing certain types of meditation and doing theta waves and all kinds of stuff, but it's just the flow part of, it's kind of like, how do I get into it, how to get out of it. But I know there's like in martial arts that theory of like be water. It's like, water
Hmm.
just does like what it does in that flow, and like it knows what to do, and no one has to tell it anything, and it just shows up at the right place and the right time. And it can be super powerful depending like how you build it, or it can be very small. It can be very hydrating and satisfying. It can be too much, too little. So it's like, again, it's always focusing on the balance. Too
Right.
much of even a good thing can be out of balance. But the thing is that what I've learned with balance or anything else and these flows is you kind of have to start to learn, how do I ask myself self-reflection questions that people just either bypass or just never ask? Because like if you don't
Right.
ask the question, then you can't figure out what's right or wrong or move down the path. Like if I get in the car, I have to say like, where am I going? Otherwise, I'm just aimlessly going. But like, and that's fine if I'm not looking for a destination. But then the journey is the destination. But I need to be aware of that,
Mm.
because it just saves you a lot of time and a lot of headaches and other stuff like that. So again, you just get back to that process of like, if I'm thinking about flow, how can I practice that? How can I incorporate that? How can I make changes to my life? Because everybody has somewhere where they need to improve. And again, it's about the practice. It's like once you move down that path, you're like, okay, maybe I'm not exercising enough. How can I build 5, 10, 15 minutes, getting up to 30 minutes a day? What does that look like for me? What are things that I actually like to do that I can move my body, that I'll enjoy and do more than just
Hmm.
doing, any old thing? It's like, I wouldn't tell someone to go on a diet and eat a type of food they don't like, because you're not going to stick to it. And so part of
Right.
that flow is figuring out what works for you, knowing that we all have different personality types, communication styles, learning styles. So that's the flow. It's how you
Right.
create that portfolio for yourself, and that's unique, just like DNA to you.
Okay. I love it. Okay, we're probably going to come back to this idea, I'm sure. One other thing, I think you mentioned yoga, right? And
Mm-hmm.
a big sort of element of yoga is, like certainly in English, right? I heard this comedian talk about, in yoga, everybody always says namaste, namaste. And namaste in Hindi, it just means like hi. So it's like, okay, everyone, hi, hi, or something like that. But also, I have a friend, in the US, in Savannah, Jenny, who kind of was all into yoga. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a funny little coincidence, right? So, and she's always referring to finding good flow, yoga flows, and So, did I hallucinate you saying yoga, or are you
No,
also
I
into
did.
yoga?
I did, and I actually do, Indian yoga, and then there's also a form of Chinese yoga called Dao Yin. And yeah, you learn about flow. I think the most interesting thing for me, because I'm like the totally non-stretchy person, so it's like just to
Mm-hmm.
touch my toes, is celebrating that small win.
Mm-hmm.
What yoga allows in the practice for you to do is you have to get used to being uncomfortable. And flow, from a yoga perspective, is mentally understanding there are parts of life that are uncomfortable, and we just have to focus on our breath and breathe through it. You don't get over it, but you can get through it. And it does take time, and that can ebb and flow and change organically to be
Mm-hmm.
different for each person. But it's like, you won't learn to stretch as far as you can if you keep stopping yourself because it's uncomfortable. So
Right.
it's just a natural part of that. When you see yogis who have been doing it for years, you're like, well, how did they get so limber Well, they probably didn't start out that way. Some people do naturally, and some people don't. But it's like you can see someone. I'll take it this way. I do public speaking class in Toastmasters, which is international all over the world. Now, I never had an issue speaking in front of people, but I've known many people who were deathly afraid of it. And I can
Yeah.
tell you, by doing something that made them uncomfortable and they kept doing it, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 speeches later, now we can't shut them up, because they got
Yeah.
used to it. But if they stopped at the first speech or the first hesitation, then they wouldn't do that. And you look
Sure.
at something like the King's speech, where this person had this stutter stammer, and then at the end delivered this huge address. Like it was like it needed to be done. He rose to the occasion. But that's everybody. That King's speech, that hero journey is inside of all of us. We just
Right.
have to tap into that potential. But almost everything you start out doing, you want to have a podcast, you want to write a book, it's going to be clunky and it's going to be painful and it's going to be awkward. And that's just the way we start, but eventually it gets better.
Well, since you said awkward, I'm going to make it awkward. I'm going to stop you from talking. I'm going to pitch your book, Side Hustle and Flow by Cliff Beach. And let's move on to the next photo. You good with that?
Yes.
I love this. I have no idea what you're serving up. Oh, boom. Okay. This is great. I don't know if this is, it may be a photograph. It may be an illustration for Instagram promotion. It's basically the outside. Okay. Close to the front, the foreground is a CD jacket. CDs. How cute. CDs. And then, so it says Cliff Beach and there's somebody at the piano. I'm assuming that's you. White suit, white hat, very colorful. Yes. The field of the photo is this kind of off-white pearl kind of, I don't know, textured background. It's like on a table or something. The CDs are all aligned in a kind of grid going off into the horizon, I guess. And inside, standing inside is the open shot of the CD with, I guess it's mostly red. There's a little bit of violet, it's very colorful. It's super colorful. I'm assuming you're promoting your CD?
Yes, I'm promoting my CD, but it has many layers to that. So this is my first jazz album that came out recently called You Showed Me the Way. It's a tribute to an amazing jazz singer, female jazz singer, Ella Fitzgerald, who's definitely known around the world. It's also dedicated to my great-grandmother. So my great-grandmother grew up in Pittsburgh. Ella Fitzgerald married a very famous bass player, Ray Brown, in Pittsburgh. And my great-grandmother, at 6 years old, is what we call in my community fast. Meaning she would walk by Ray Brown's house and she had a schoolgirl crush on him. So she would wave and say, "Hi, Mr. Brown." And then she would look at Ella in disgust because she thought he stole her man. And my grandma was very much like that. And so now that she's no longer with us, I like being able to carry the torch to honor her and talk about her. And so whenever I get a chance to speak about her or write about her, or I sent it to the Pittsburgh jazz station where she was from, so that they would play and talk about her. And so that makes me feel really good. My mom also executive produced the album.
Oh, wicked.
Which means that she gave me some money to be able to put it out. And that's exciting because I just come from a very strong matriarch. The image that you see there, the album artwork, as well as that Instagram image, was done by a friend of mine who does imagery called Image Stricken. And we wanted to be able to showcase, I'm a huge fan of Kehinde Wiley, so I wanted to have that kind of artwork where we were overlaying and superimposing a lot of bright color. So even though I cannot paint to save my life, even my stick figures are crude and it's bad. But maybe
even my stick figures are Rubenesque.
Yeah, right. It's like they're no Picasso doodle for $10,000 or anything. But I think it's cool because I respect him and I've seen so much of his artwork. But I go to museums on purpose, even if I don't understand art, because I appreciate it. And I've worked and commissioned artwork for albums from different artists. Some as far from me as Mexico, and I'd love to work with other people just because, and people who I'd never met. I was like, I like your artwork, let's do something. Send it to me. And so that was
Let me
fun.
stop you. I'm one of those shit hosts who stops and interrupts all the time.
That's
So
okay.
I'm very sorry. Okay. So, cause I don't know help me figure out who and where you are. So where are you exactly?
I'm in LA. I'm in Los Angeles, but I'm
Okay.
originally from Washington, D.C. So I live in the States, and I'm a funk artist. I lived in LA for 20 years.
Okay. Okay. That's okay. Great. That's really great. You mentioned your grandmother and your grandmother
Hmm.
and grandmother, but does she have a name?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Her name is Cora Lee Washington. And
Great
yeah,
name.
she was a powerful woman. She grew up through the Depression, but she wanted to make sure we knew she never went hungry, and her family was
Hmm.
not poor. And actually, my family were black millionaires in the 20s. They owned all of the ice and coal in Pittsburgh
Oh,
before
wow.
heating and refrigeration. And so, yeah, they were rich, and they had a lot of famous musicians like the Temptations and a lot of Motown stars come and stay
Oh,
with them
wow.
because my grandpa had a pool table and a full bar, so he was like the after party place,
Right.
and he
Right.
liked to have fun and have a good time. But yeah, they were unconventional for the time, but they loved to have fun. They were heavy drinkers, unfiltered cigarette smokers, so
Right.
but they lived a long time.
Nice. But okay, so you're a musician and it's really apparent to people that to become a musician good, there's no magic. It's just practice and you play and you practice and you play and you're there and it becomes an extension. Similarly for writing, since most of us think and most of us
Hmm.
talk, there's
Yeah.
this sense that to be a writer is a little bit more intuitive. It's more like, okay, I'm just going to put down to paper onto the computer or whatever my thoughts into some kind of narrative. But in your case, would you say, like, where does that sort of move to expression come out strongest? Is it through music? Is it through writing? I mean, is your approach to music like that of a writer, or is your approach to writing like that of a jazz musician?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. Music is my foremost love and what I do the most. Writing was just a bucket list item that I wanted to do, but I'm
Hmm.
very heady. I read a lot of books, but I try not to think of music in a cerebral way like I do about writing and reading.
Mm.
But I will tell you this parallel is that whatever you decide to do, it's all about full immersion. So the reason why as a kid you're able to learn language and learn to speak so quickly is because you surround yourself with adults who are quote unquote experts in speaking that language. And so
Mm.
music or anything else is the same way. If you fully immerse yourself in it, you start playing as we teach kids their instrument, putting them into bands so we learn together, then you definitely move much faster. So I don't think there's any way to think, but I think once you kind of understand the creative process, then you can adopt that and laterally move to other mediums. Because
Hmm.
ultimately, if you're doing music and songs, books versus movies versus films versus TV series, all of them are different mediums that allow for different types of storytelling. So the
Hmm.
arc is different. If I'm trying to give you a 3 minute pop song, there's only so much story I can give you versus a 7.5 hour audiobook versus a 20-year TV series. So it
Hmm.
isn't
Hmm.
like there's a right or wrong way. I know that people will say like, well, why is the movie so different from the book? It has to be
Yep.
because the mediums are different. I can't tell the story in the same way. When you're reading a book, you are the director. You're creating a movie in your own mind that only you know. And it's tied to what you like and what
Hmm.
you gravitate to. And the director's not able to do that. So I think that's the thing. It's like once you tap into that, I think the hardest thing for me is that I know we live in a world where there's more creative people, but they've discounted themselves because our school systems basically beat out creativity from most of us because we feel like we have to be serious or we won't make money doing that or whatever it is. And so
Hmm.
there's more people that could be creating awesome things if they just open themselves up again to that level of consciousness that allows you to do that. So I think once you tap into that, if you say, hey, I want to write a book and you never did it, you can. If you want to write a song and you never did it, I think you could if you really
Hmm.
wanted to.
Hmm.
But I think the catharsis for me, just getting your feelings and your ideas out there, I think there's a level of like, it creates almost like a cancer inside you if you don't get it out. I think you also go crazy if you don't get it out. You have to be able to get things out of your brain. The mind is able to create a lot of ideas, but it's not meant to hold them. And if you don't share them with the world, then we will never know.
I love it. I totally love it. Though here's the thing. Everybody has their own rhythm. Everyone has their own cadence. And like how you speak is just kind of basically the externalization of how your brain functions, right? And so, for example, because I'm looking at the image, it's a CD cover. The inside jacket is of you in a white suit, which is a heavy rock statement. To wear a white suit, that's pretty badass. Sitting at a yellow kind of, I think it's yellow wood piano. And behind is a woman, can't quite tell, who she is. So my question is, how do people listen to your work? Because to read your thoughts, get the book. To listen to your music, where do they go?
Oh, well, under Cliff Beach, you can stream my music anywhere, all over the world, on all the streaming platforms. And there are physical vinyl and CDs for certain albums and stuff. But streaming would definitely be the best. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, however you consume music, you'll find it under Cliff Beach, yeah.
Okay, so how's this? This is going to be my last question before I have to move on to the next photo. Usually before you write a book, it's like you come to this sort of decision point and you're just like, and that kind of spark happens and you're like, okay, I think I'm going to go down that road. Now, for the CD or for a song, can you tell a story of, say, the first time? Because the first one is always, the most challenging because you've never done it before. You have no frame of reference, right? So can you talk about the first time that either you wrote a song, you put together that album, or that kind of got you over that hump? Like was it somebody who pushed you? What pushed you out of that comfort zone?
Yeah, so in 2013, I had a previous band in 2006 that released 2 albums, but really I felt in 2013 I released my first actual Cliff Beach album, and it's called Who the Funk is Cliff Beach. And I called it that because
I love it.
I was trying to answer, like, I had this producer who was like, he's like, you're a great singer, you're a great writer, you're a great pianist. He's like, but you have to tell the world who you are. Mm-hmm. Like, there's lots of people who do that, but who are you? And why is that unique and different? What's your X factor? So that's what that was supposed to do. And I love that you explained it the way you did, because one, I think we just have a lot of fears. We have to feel that fear and do it anyway. I did not know how to create an album at the time, so I just started telling people about it, and somehow that ended up with a band and a team and engineers and some money, and we got it done. And it wasn't the best album I made in my life, but it was the best in terms of I pushed myself out of the comfort zone. I remember like the years before I did that, because I had started working on material. And the album didn't come out for about 3 years. And I had a friend who kept pushing me. He was like, you just need to put an album out, dude. That's what he always said. And I was just like, I don't know. Is it time? And this and that. It's like, there is no perfect time. There is no perfect situation. We actually know through scientific evidence, if you give one team, like, hey, I want you to make one thing that's your best, or you're like, this other team, I want you to make 10 things. The people who do 10 exponentially by their 10th are better than the ones that just did one, because you learned at every step. So 10 albums later, I have a whole different process. I understand exactly, like, that needs this, that needs that. Not like every question can be answered, but it's like I know how to put a team together. I know what it looks like to start and finish, and that's so hard. There's so many people who are like, I want to do it. They never figure out their central message. They never figure out the medium. They don't move, or they have to figure out, if I start this and I miss a day, then they just quit. It's like, no, you need to get back on it the next day, and you need to be driving always towards the goal and always towards the finish line. Because everybody who started a book, who got to chapter 1 that didn't finish the rest, we're not going to get that book. You've got to keep going, plow through. It's not for the faint of heart. I've learned now that with anything creative, you have the decision and discipline, and then from there are delays and dead ends and disappointments, and those D's people don't know how to deal with, and that's when you quit. That's why Angela Duckworth said you have to have true grit Perseverance is sticking with something when the feeling and the love for it has passed. Because every project I've done, when I got to the end of 10 rounds of edits for that book, I was like, if I never hear another word out of my mouth again, I don't want to read this. I don't want to hear it. But then eventually you take space, you take time. You're like, this is good, and I'm glad that I did it. And it's like, I can go back through years and pull out a book or a CD or an album and say, I did that. That's a snapshot of what I did with my own force,
Right.
my own life force.
Right.
And I think that's important. It's like, you don't want to go on, you spend all this money and then you look back and you're like, what did I buy? What did I do? Like, was this meaningful? That's not good.
You're
it's
right.
like, for me, it's like there's, Marie Kondo says, touch everything. Does it bring you joy? I only do stuff that's fun. I only do things that keep me curious about the world and I find interesting. I'm not doing fluff projects. Either I want to do it and it really invigorates me, or I just don't do it. But it's like when I hold them up and I look at them, it's exciting to see what I've done. But knowing that my best is still yet to come, I'm still moving forward.
Cliff Beach is in the house. I love it. Okay, wait a second. Okay, so this image... So that's where it is. You drank the Kool-Aid, to use a phrase that is not even that all that accurate. Okay, so it's so it's a photo of a certificate. Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within. Hey, Cliff Beach, Tony Robbins' signature. It's a certificate image that, yes, you've unleashed the power within. And here you are. Okay. Are we really going to plug Tony Robbins? We're going to get him to sponsor your episode. How's that?
That'd be awesome. I know that people have like a love-hate relationship with people in that kind of status, but
wait,
me,
wait. I'm going to interrupt you now because I do it all the time. What I'm going to interrupt you with is I am like you. I know because I've been there. So don't worry about it. We're speaking the same language. So Tony Robbins, that whole thing, I'm there with you. Keep going.
But I was going to say for me, because it's interesting. It's like what I love about these photos is like, it sounds like, wow, I'm patting myself on the back. It has nothing to do with that. The beauty of that photo, one, it's just an amazing experience. To push yourself to higher limits, you just have to do it. But for me, the backstory of that, why it's so significant, is that I had a friend who went through a heavy trauma during the pandemic and lost someone very close to them to suicide. And I was just there for them. I listened to them, and we had standing meetings every 2 weeks, where we just checked in, like, how are you doing? And anyway, so he ended up, because I would share a lot of Tony Robbins with him and we did a lot of the free challenges, he ended up gifting to me to go to Unleash the Power Within, because he said that I had helped him so much. Out of the kindness of my heart, I did it because I would do it for anybody. But it meant something to him, and that meant a lot to me, because I feel like it's cliche, but it's like the secret to living is giving. But it's like, as I get older, it's like I want it to be less about me. Like, I do these things that are cool to show other people that you can do it too. And I want everyone to be able to live their best life, because I didn't always have that. I didn't always have dreams and aspirations and know how to put plans and goals together and learn how to manage myself. I say manage myself because people think you manage time, but that's ridiculous. Time manages itself, and it marches on. You manage yourself in relation to time. That's different. But I love Tony. I've been reading his books since I was a kid, which is odd because a lot of kids don't do that. My mom says I listen to nothing but AM radio and people who, talk AM radio. Like that as a kid. I was very serious as a kid. I was like,
well, those are your podcasts.
Right. Yeah. It's like, because I think I learned early on, and with whole Side Hustle and Flow was about, it's like, why does one person's life amazing? Like, why have they curated this amazing life? Other people's life is just okay. It's like, I mean, to wake up out of the bed and be basic, it's like anybody. That just takes no effort. Like, why would I get out of bed for that? It's like, I want to be better than that. Not because I want to lord it over people, but it's like, you do exercises because you become stronger to prove that you could do it to yourself. And you want to look in the mirror every day and be like, I'm moving the needle a little bit more forward. So Tony pushed us to do that. I broke a board for the first time, which I had never done. I did not do the fire walking because it was virtual and I have carpet, and that would be a disaster. But yeah, it was like, it's super intense. It's super immersive. they get decades into days, and you're up and you're doing stupid stuff that makes you uncomfortable, and you're talking to people you don't know, and it's like it's nice to be just in a place where it's like after years of being that weirdo, everyone's weird and you're just
Right.
normal, and it's like everyone's just trying to be better and learn and realizing like we don't know it all, and yeah, this person is making a lot of money and pitching you a lot of stuff, but it's worth it because every time I've gone to his stuff for free or read his books for free or bought them or whatever, I've learned something that
Yep.
changed my life. And that's worth something. And the investment in yourself can never be bad.
Yes, yes, and yes. Now, so I've read his books. I haven't done any of his seminars. I've done other seminars like this thing called the Landmark Forum and whatever. And then,
Oh, yeah.
and so it's really funny that when people say to me, like, cause originally people are kind of suspicious, right? Like, okay, what's the scam? What's the score? There's always that suspicion, right? And then how I've said it is like, yeah, imagine it's brainwashing that leaves you empowered, more optimistic, more positive about the future. So yeah, they call it brainwashing. And yes, they have their commercial needs and commercial wants and mission to keep growing and make money and all that stuff. That's fine. But that's how they sustain giving their seminars. But yeah, like why not give yourself a sort of a separate, a side hustle where you're inspiring yourself to be bigger than who you really are, right? How is that a bad thing? And I unleash the power within. I mean, it makes for a very dull conversation to sit with somebody who's got no energy, who isn't radiating. If you want to use Tony Robbins' word, like power, right? It's kind of dull to sit with somebody who's just like a wet noodle. You're no wet noodle.
Yeah, and it's like just learning how you talk to yourself or how you talk to other, like the power of your words, the impeccability of your words, following through on your word. We have a trust society, and it breaks when people don't follow through. and you let yourself down when you don't follow through, when you give up on yourself. And it's like to look at someone who came from nothing, who came from trauma, but they turn that into good. It's like you look at oysters. Oysters create pearls. I always want to say clowns, but I'm pretty sure it's oysters. Oysters create pearls, but they create them because of an irritation. The sand that gets in their throat or wherever they just keep rubbing it, and a pearl is formed. They create this beauty from something that's painful. And that's the metaphor for life. And so, at least the power within just says, what you already knew. It's like the Wizard of Oz. You had the ruby slippers and could go home anytime. You had the power inside you all the time. But you don't tap into it. You don't have an awareness that you had it. But we're all born with what we need to survive. And now we need to push from survive to thrive. That's why someone's life is amazing and someone is just okay.
Now, living in Los Angeles, which is so I live in Hong Kong, which is a pretty tough city. You live in Los Angeles, trying to make a living, trying to make a life. And I know that there's the LA that is, that's in the media LA, which has, which is one image, right? And then it's sort of like Las Vegas, right? People have this idea of what Las Vegas is, but, Las Vegas has really good university. Las Vegas has really great outside of the strip, has a whole universe unto itself. So, so why don't you talk about how you converted your training, right? Be it with these self-help seminars, how you converted that into action that either created obviously artistic expression, writing a book, but how else does that manifest?
That's a great question. I think, when you talk about Hollywood and it being smoke and mirrors and different than it really is, that's what it's made to do. And so, there's a lot of places that are like that. I call Side Hustle and Flow the Hollywood shuffle, that you can shuffle anywhere. I think coming from the music world, one of the big disappointments with education is that what they don't tell you in school as a musician or an artist is that you are an entrepreneur. You're a solopreneur. You are 100%. Forced to understand business. And if you're just only focusing on art and you don't know where the marriage of art and commerce is and your role in that, that's not good. And so when you look at side hustle and flow from a business perspective, you're thinking about your life as you would if you were investing, as a hedge fund manager. You
Mm-hmm.
diversify your portfolio and you hedge your bets. So it's like if I'm getting only one income stream or only using one talent, even within music, it's like I have a radio show, I've worked in TV, I've licensed music for film and TV and commercials, and I've written songs and I produce songs and I produce other people and I've run a label and a publishing company. It's like your dream expands beyond what you thought 20 years ago. I thought I was a singer and a keyboard player. I didn't think
Mm-hmm.
about any of these other things. But I kept saying yes when the opportunities came, and I kept preparing in the shadows for opportunities to come. So when they fell in my lap, I was ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the beauty of what I cultivated is like school is great and education is great and it's expensive. So just know that. But there's so much education outside of the classroom
Sure.
that you can get. And ultimately, what you need to learn is a methodology to continue to learn.
Yep.
But the classroom doesn't teach you that. The classroom actually teaches you the opposite effect. You go to school, you party, you have a great time, and it's social, and it's awesome. But they teach you a fallacy in life that you can cram. You cannot cram life.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just study to pass a test, that's not true learning. That's not true development. And so the farmer cannot cram. You can't
Right.
plant a seed and then pick up a tomato the next day. That doesn't work. It's unnatural. And so you have to learn that delayed gratification is in there and some good things are going to take time.
Yes, I agree. But I think school does teach you a different thing, right? Like I think one of the lessons you learn about cramming, for example, is to be very pragmatic of doing what you can do in the sort of, in the shortened time that you have to just tick the box, right? And it's not, I mean, are you really learning anything outside of that main lesson of how to tick the box and move on to the next accomplishment? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. And look, I believe like what you're saying is that life is a continuous learning, right? You should always be learning and soaking things up.
You should. And I agree with you too. I'm not saying that there's never a point in your life where you have to cram or make a decision quickly. It's more of you can't have all microwave meals. That would be disgusting after a certain amount of time. So not everything can be quick. Something is beautiful by taking the time that it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You can make an album in a month, you can make an album in a year, and they are different. And there's reasons to do that. There are industries that create fast products and longer products. And they all fit. But again, you have that diverse portfolio. So as long as you have a mix, if you're cramming 25% of the time and you're doing other deeper things, it's just knowing that you're not going to get all your learning from the classroom. You're not going to get all your fulfillment from work. And you need to figure out where else can I get sources of truth and information and happiness and whatever I need. You're not going to get everything from one relationship. Even if you're married to that person or whatever, that's a death sentence. To just try to squeeze this person like a sponge for everything. You need other people. Yep. You need other people of other backgrounds. It can't just be one thing. So I think that's the main thing is like, that's what you're curating. It's like, how do I have all of these friendships and relationships and sources to draw upon, and knowing that there are other sources that I don't know. There's 7 billion people in the world. Have I met them all? No. What can I do to get out there more?
Well, I think one of the things you can do is talk to me, and then at this point, I guess we can shift on to your last photo. What? Okay, so this is like a screenshot of the Social Sound interviews with a so it's two photos next to each other, two people. Cliff, you're on the left, wearing an absolutely fantastic Day of the Dead style shirt. I really love it. And on the right is a very familiar face, laughing, smiling. Great shot. And underneath the banner says Jean Baptiste with Cliff Beach. And then it says Jean Baptiste interview with Cliff Beach, the SoCal Sound Sessions in Studio on YouTube. This is the image, right?
Yes.
Yeah, would you consider this a high point in your interviewing history?
Yes, he's definitely the most decorated, almost EGOT, Oscar, Grammy, Emmy, Tony. He's got a lot, and
Yeah.
it was just one of those things that happened by happenstance, being part of the radio station, and they asked me, and I don't get asked all the time, and I wanted to make it happen because I have so much admiration for him as an artist and what he's done. You know, he led a house band on television. I led a house band on television, so I saw a lot of parallels there. But what
Mm.
you see if you actually watch the videos, that like he just was what he
Mm.
was. He wasn't trying to be anything. Like he literally came into the interview singing, and he sang my name so many times, and I felt like I was special just being there. But he was so genuine, and like he was so happy when I asked him questions that I really went deep into the questions and the catalog, just like you're doing, where it's like it's not the same old interview that we always get. It was like
Mm.
it was unique. You know, we were
Mhm.
singing to each other and having a dialogue. And so, yeah, that was just exciting just to remember, because for a long time with therapy and other stuff, I'm just a person who like bulldozes all my wins. Because to me, it's like, well, if I haven't won a Grammy, then it's nothing. It doesn't exist from a music
Okay.
standpoint. And so for me, it was like to see this person, it was like, no, it's about, 3 years ago, I didn't have a radio show. And the year before that, I didn't have a podcast. And I started the book and the podcast in the pandemic because I didn't
Hmm.
have any shows when we shut down. And so it was like all these things were inside me that I didn't know
Mm.
until they got activated by that opportunity crisis necessity. And it reminds me when I look at that picture of how happy we are, that it was like, again, it has nothing to do with me. It just has to do more of, I said yes. I said yes to the opportunity. I said yes when I was scared. I said yes when I knew nothing about broadcasting and radio. I didn't. I said
Hmm.
yes to interviewing someone who I would be intimidated by normally, but I said no. He's just a person like me. He's a human like me.
Yep.
And if they think I can do it, why can't I do it? Let's do it,
Nice.
And so we made it
Nice.
happen. So that's what I look at that photo and it reminds me like that was a good day.
So, what question emerge? So, I kind of feel that sometimes, it's like, okay, it's the chemistry, right? So
Hmm.
I made reference to the book, that I co-authored called The 12 Dimensions of a Service Leader. And so what we talk about is service is just the energy between two people, right? So right now I'm giving you a
Hmm.
service, you're giving me a service, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, when you were having that interview with Jean Baptiste, like things emerge that you would never have expected, right? You can have your list of
Hmm.
questions or whatever, but then
Right.
there's like this magic of chemistry that's like, wow, where did that come from? And that's that audio burp that is actually beautiful. So can you remember one that happened? It's funny to call it an audio burp, but whatever it was, like that magical
Yeah.
moment.
Hmm. Well, I believe that we stand on the shoulders of giants. So I knew about Jean Baptiste from people I interviewed from New Orleans who told me that he came from a very famous musical family in New
Hmm.
Orleans. And he actually, on the album we were talking about at the time, had his dad on there. And so I asked him what that was like
Hmm.
to have people from your family, because my family is very musical too, just to kind of understand that aspect of it, that it was like all his wins are because of like the paved roads that his ancestors created.
Hmm.
That now he's walking down and continuing on and making new roads for other people. And so that was exciting because he had a lot of great things to say. And obviously New Orleans is just steeped in so much history of
Oh
music in
yeah.
general, especially with jazz, that it's like, and being a pianist, and then just seeing his trajectory of like, I saw how he grew as a person being on TV. I remember seeing him and I was like, he was more shy and less and
Hmm.
more introverted. And then all of a sudden it was like he exploded and he was dancing and up and wearing crazy clothes and like, it's like he was always that, but it's like you don't always tap into that right away. Like for me, it's like everyone sees me now and they're like, you always have red and black and you have cool glasses and tattoos. Like, well, I didn't have
Mm.
that 10 years ago, but I grew into that because it was like as you start stripping off the baggage and you get
Hmm.
more to the real you, the more you reveal under there, the more I think becomes infectious to other people. So it's like he's singing, I'm singing, we're mirroring in kind, and we just had a vibe. And it was like 13, 15 minutes of just pure, just
Oh,
back
wow.
and forth. No dead time, just pure camaraderie and admiration. And what I respect and love about him is that he treated me like an equal, not knowing who I was, not knowing necessarily about my music and stuff, but through the process, just he was going to give me respect no matter what. He
Yep.
was a human being. I think that's great because I've definitely met people who are like, I loved your music, and you were kind of like a douche to me, and now I can't listen to your music.
Right,
You know?
right. No,
And
yeah, I've been there too.
yeah.
Okay, so two humans meeting, two humans exchanging, and then there's this funny magic that happens. Okay, so an album that was really influential in your life.
Oh wow, an album that was really influential in my life. So many. That's such a hard question. I mean, it's cliche, but I'll say it like this: I was born a cold December of 1982, and in 1982.
Yeah.
There's two main albums that came out in that time, but the biggest one is Michael Jackson Thriller. So I
Sure.
was a huge Michael Jackson fan.
Yeah.
He made me want to do music as a kid. I used to watch this VHS tape called Moonwalker, and I was glued to it. I remember watching like The Wiz and other stuff. It was just like everything about showmanship, musicianship. It was just like magnetic.
Yep.
This person. I mean, I remember as a kid, he would stop primetime television to premiere videos. I've never seen that. I've also never seen a man come on stage that can make grown men cry. I mean, they just passed out. It was ridiculous. It was like everyone was passing out at these concerts. And so yeah, Thriller is Michael Jackson, but it's like it takes teamwork to make a dream work. So as I went to Berkeley, where I went to college, Quincy Jones studied there. Quincy Jones was integral to making Thriller great because his jazz underpinnings and arrangements, he had two main philosophies. One is that you need to have hooks within hooks within hooks. So
Right.
the bass has a hook, drum has a hook, keys has a hook, vocal has a hook, background has hooks. That's how you make a song that lasts
Wow.
you want to hear over and over and over. At the same time, he had a rule, you can't polish doo-doo, which I also agree, which means the inputs are as important as the output.
Right.
So you must have goodness going in there.
Yep.
And whenever they would play the music and Michael Jackson danced a certain way, they knew that was the hit. That's the one to go with.
Nice.
And so, but the thing is, what people don't know as a musician, if we have time, I'll give a short story. But basically, 1979, Off the Wall was an amazing album. The first Quincy Jones-Michael pairing after The Wiz. And what happens, which is great, the Grammys gave Michael he won one Grammy that year in a commercial break. He was so pissed that he felt like, man, this was a great album and I got snubbed. He said, my next album will be so good, they will have to give me multiple Grammys.
Wow.
He was one of the first to win 5-6 Grammys a night. 3 years later, it drove him to do that. That's why I say again, like the oyster, those moments that are painful, sometimes you learn something in that moment and you use that as a catalyst to spring forward, which you would have never probably done the same way if you were like, oh, that never happened. So all those things that happen, you don't know why they work. When you zoom out years later, those pieces somehow start to fit together. The path is not linear, but eventually you get there. And I think you just got to use all that stuff because there's always a nugget of truth. There's always a nugget of lesson. There's always a nugget of something that can propel you forward if you choose to see it that way and frame it that way.
Okay. So let me shift that question over. Book. What book do people have to read or see beyond your book to kind of that was really important? Because to be a writer is a different kind of animal. So
Sure.
Can you think of a book that really got you, that shifted your thinking?
Yeah, well, I always tell people one of the books in the mid-2000s while I was working on Holland America Cruise Line, cruising around the world, I read Rick Warren's Purpose Driven Life, which is a pretty big book. My mom ran the choir at his church, so it's a Christian book, but it went secular to all kinds of places because the book says it's not about you, which I like, but it really, to me, had a message of like, there are no mistakes. There's so many people that are born into certain situations and you feel like, oh, I was a happy accident or I wasn't meant to be here and that kind of thing. And that book really shifted my mindset in that way. There's like, you don't get to choose where you come from, but you get to choose like how you feel about it. And there's nothing that you can do about the past or where you come from. So when you're looking forward, just know like that mindset isn't true. It's like to even be here, the millions of cells that have to go different places, sperm cells to get into that egg, to make it 9 months, to be born, that's like a miracle of its own.
It's a total miracle.
Yeah, if you see it that way, then, like we have $1 million bodies. It's like if it's functional and you can think and you can move, it's like, man, there's so many people that would love that and you don't have that and take that for granted. And so that book really pushed me, again, purpose-driven life. I never thought about what's my purpose, what's my dream.
You flew by really kind of quickly. That's kind of how you throw your seeds out into the wind. So what was the book and what was the author again?
Oh, sure. The author is Rick Warren.
Okay.
And the book is called The Purpose-Driven Life.
Okay. Thank you for us slower people. I love it.
Yeah. You know what it is that I'm like super anxious, hyper, but also I listen to all my books at 2x speed. So I developed a very fast talking style.
Okay.
I absorb information. Like if they could go faster, I would do faster.
Maybe you're just Spanish. What is it? You just talk fast.
Yeah, right?
No problem. I don't know. I'm trying to speaking with a bad Italian accent.
Right? It's awesome. I can't do accents either. But no, it's good. Yeah, even with public speaking, they're like, you have to slow down. And now I'm getting feedback. They're like, you finally learned to do it. So when people make me aware of it, I get super excited. But then I can say, no.
I fucking love it. I love it. Okay. Look, we've covered your book. We've covered your CD. You've unleashed the power within for people, and you shared this amazing conversation you have with Jean Baptiste. Look, you have the floor for the last minute. How do you want this to be your testament? Not your testament, but how do you want to go out with a crescendo or something?
I just want everyone to know, if you forget everything, remember this one thing. You are perfect just the way you are. And you don't have to be or do anything or be anything else than that. And so there's so many times where you're hearing all this outside negativity or other voices. It's the inner voice within yourself is the only guidance you need to listen to. But you have to be quiet to hear that because it gets drowned out, because it doesn't yell at you. And I have this motto that I learned from Snoopy, from Charles Schultz. It says, do you. No one can say that you did you wrong, because only you get to say. You're the captain of your own ship and the master of your own fate. You get to decide. You get to choose.
Clifton, the beach man. Thank you.
Yes.
This has been great. I love these conversations, and you delivered. Oh, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so happy. So nice meeting you. Best of luck to everything, and I'll be listening again.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
Oh, baby, I